It's like, okay, like these are the years, be present. Oh, we're live. All right, we're just talking about my daughter's birthday. She's turning 13 today. So, little baby girl's 13. Um, it feels, it's definitely a milestone. And so, welcome everyone to the Coaching and Flourish podcast. I know, okay, we're live on Facebook. I'm going to take a minute to reflect on being the father of a 13-year-old. But it's cool. I mean, so that she has an older sister who's 15, and it's really sweet to see them process together. And my 15-year-old often jokes how she is the daughter of two life coaches. So she's able to tell her friends and people this, so it gives her full license to, make life coaching jokes and do all, you know, get super intentional and ask meaningful questions and set the intention for meetings and in a meeting, like when they go out to hang out, like what's our intention, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It is the coolest, and I feel like there is a language. There is this younger generation. It's remarkable. They are moving the ball forward as a people, and feeling and just their awareness and vocabulary that they're developing is remarkable. I have a lot of hope for this younger generation. It's very cool. I mean, there are some challenges too, but yeah, I think the world's going to be in good hands.
What do
Anyway,
you think we can learn from this generation, John?
uh, okay, so just back up just a slight little bit. When I was teaching high school, I feel like high school teachers are always in touch with what's happening with teenagers, and in that sense, they never grow old. So like when you meet a high school teacher who's in their 60s or 70s about to retire, and they've been doing it their whole lives, like that person has literally like they are on the cutting edge of teenager, forever going forward. I've met you've met these people, when they're older, and there's a
Yeah.
certain youthfulness about them. I think what the young people see, they see the world with open eyes. They see it brand fresh. I think with this younger generation, some of the things that they have going for them is there's just so much information out there that if they have a question or a problem or something, they can go search the answer, and that is empowerment. So now you have all this, and they're taking that empowerment for granted, not in a bad way, but in a this is going to allow me to create or do or be or experience, something that I feel like is a truth for me. How this shows up a lot is I feel like this younger generation is creating whole new vocabulary around gender and sexuality, which is needed and necessary to look at some of these structures. They care a lot about the climate, social justice. There is, an awareness of, politics and how that plays out. I think there's a general feeling of, we're in this together in some ways that is heartening to see. But I'm only seeing it from a small slice of some of the students I work with as a coach, and then my own daughters and their networks. But yeah, I think with the empowerment and the ubiquity of knowledge, they feel like they can do different things, or if there's something that they want to do, they can go out and just do it. So there's also talk around how college is not as important as it was, but I mean, it's still there. It's not going to go away. But those are the biggest trends I see. It's really cool. It's
It is
fantastic.
cool. It's exciting. It does make me wonder sometimes how I got anywhere without kind of Google Maps and
I know, right?
where did I find information? I had to go to a library and actually use a map.
Right. Like when I was in college, that was when the floppy disks, the big ones became the little ones. And then those little ones were like, wow, so much more information on the little one. And they're so much more reliable. And I remember having to back it up twice in case one of the disks got too close to a magnet and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, my first job presentation, I had to use those plastic things. I had to write my presentation on it. one of those OHP, and it projected onto the wall. So wow, okay, that's just something to reflect on. But it actually connects nicely to my question. I'm going to flip the questions today,
Okay,
actually,
let's do
because
it.
you were talking about birthday and celebration, and we just started talking about kind of how things have evolved. So why is it important to celebrate our successes?
Yeah, I was getting into a couple of these projects, looking at some research. There are some people who say celebration is no good. Like, don't celebrate. Uh, Celebration puts it back into a reward or a some sort of how do we say it, like yeah, conditional motivation, where if I do this project or if I do this thing, then I can celebrate this, and then you're doing it for the reward, not for the flow state. So I think that mindful celebration, or celebration that serves as a structure of a flow state, of a particular way of being, of approaching something, and a reminder of your brilliance, of your hard work, of the efficacy of growth mindset. These are really important reminders, so that when you're in the present moment, you see it and go, that yeah, like I needed that reminder. Like if I'm going through a tough time, I can remember that I've been here before. If I put in the work, things are going to happen. I can trust the process. I can trust myself. This to me is the purpose of celebration. I don't agree with celebration that does go into more of the conditional mindset, where, like, if I do this, then I get to eat two M&Ms or whatever. Like, that's fine, but mindfully use those. But I think more of the celebration into is more of a structure, usually a token or a thing that after a milestone's reached. Like, I'll do a lot of orchids. I don't know. I just got a new desk mat. I want them to. I want there's an intentionality around it. Like, I want this to be a structure to remind me of a certain aspect of self and a certain aspect of work, a certain aspect of success, and those. Yeah, that's how I craft them. That's how I've crafted them with clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of clients that I work with, especially executive clients, women, a lot of women that I work with that and are not great, and I've been great myself in the past at celebrating how far they've come. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always the next goal or the next milestone. And then what happens when you finally get there? Where is that fulfillment? So what are your thoughts on people who are really hard on themselves and just kind of working towards that next goal?
Yeah, we have been talking about this a lot. So one thing that Moise and I have been talking about is separating worth from accomplishment. And there's a practice. Okay, so the practice is this. Let's say you go to the grocery store because you have a daughter's birthday coming up, but you're not used to going. You're going to a separate, different grocery store than you're used to, and you have a time limit. You have to get all these things. This happened to me yesterday, and I was stressed out. I was like, "Oh no, I'm running through a grocery store. I've got about an hour and a half window here to get the goods for the party." And there were a couple of things I knew I wasn't quite right. I just did the best I could, and I got back, and I knew they weren't right. But then there's that element of, oh, I want to get it right so bad that if I don't get it right, then there's an attachment of worth to, like, my self-worth attached to, oh, did I get the right thing? And inevitably you can't. I mean, it's almost impossible not to. So there's, I don't know, like something that I'm leaning into where it's like, oh, look for opportunities where you get it wrong. Like, and then you can say to yourself, oh, my worth isn't connected to getting it right. It's amazing to me how much my life I live where worth is connected to getting it right. And when you can separate that just a little bit, catch yourself in those situations. It's like when you think of like a yellow car or something, and then the next day you see 20 yellow cars, and you haven't looked at a yellow car ever, or you haven't noticed them in the past 2 weeks. It's the same kind of phenomenon, and so that's one thing I've been playing with. So instead of having to go back to the thought is, instead of having a goal or a milestone or even an outcome that is clearly defined, which is really useful and helpful. I think these are useful, helpful things. But instead, to craft a vision. And a vision might not necessarily have set goals, but a vision, I mean, it might include set goals, but it's not only set goals. It's a moment in time. It's a narrative. It's a story. It's something you can step into and live over a progressive period of time. It's not just like a simple, okay, one and done. And so I think that the challenge with a lot of these goals is, if it's a one and done, like, okay, so I want to enroll 10 clients this month. Okay, that's a one and done. The vision might be, I want to, provide, excellent life coaching services to 10 or more clients, and to be in those sessions and to feel like I'm contributing to humanity, and I'm looking at my schedule, and this is what's happening. So the vision expands time, and it incorporates a narrative and a story in a much deeper way than maybe a goal or an outcome will. I have another thought on this too. So I was listening last night to Algorithms to Live By, and this is coming back from the grocery store, and it was my 15-year-old, and we're listening to this together. It is just so cool to hear her process at the same time. Anyway, we're getting to a point where we're thinking we're chapter 4. It's about how computers work and how they cache information and how they sort, and how caching is a really effective way of doing this, of sorting lots of information, making sure computers are fast. Our computers might have up to 6 different caching mechanisms at play, like six different hierarchies of places to store information depending on how we use it. And they're saying how they talked about temporal locality as a thing. That was a concept last night. So temporal locality just means, what time did it happen, right? But it's more than what time did it happen. It's how recent was it? How frequent was it? What was the next, like, not the last time, but the next to last time. So if you're looking at caching theory and computers, they have all, like, computer scientists have all these terms, all this description of temporal locality. And so the idea then is, okay, so where does your best self live? Like, what's the temporal locality of your best lived day? Like, how long ago was your best lived day? What was your next to best lived day? So if you're looking at this from a standpoint of caching or like a systems, now you can start to think about it from from time standpoint, but time standpoint as location. So that's just last night. I've been playing with that all last night and all this morning in my head, thinking about this, how this will work, because the premise is what computer science shows from just the hundreds, looking at thousands of people, big data, is that the most likely thing to happen in the future is what has happened in the recent past. That's scary. That doesn't seem happy for people who want to change. But the happy thing is, if you make just one change, like one step, let's say you get to the gym once, you're more likely to get to the gym twice. If you get to the gym twice, you're more likely to get to the gym 4 times. So whatever it is you want to do, whatever it is, the thing that you think, okay, this is something that really needs to happen in my life, you just start to up its frequency. And you can trust, if you can do it once, you can do it twice. Such a cool idea. And it's really using, I think, insights of temporal locality as how can you get as many reps into your life, on a consistent basis. I think, I haven't yet played fully with this idea, but I've been, in my mind's been like surfing it for the last 18 hours. I don't know.
I
Yeah.
love it, John. Any coaches listening, I was thinking of questions right there to even work with your client. Where does your best self live? I'm going to journal on that question.
Like
That's a great question.
what would make today, what would make today an utter masterpiece? And when you craft, let's say craft one day next week, just craft a masterpiece day. What went into it? How did you do it? And then can you craft one masterpiece day a week? Like, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? Like you start, it's a different, it's a different way of thinking. You ask questions, you'll get different avenues of curiosity open up.
We're doing it right now. We're creating a masterpiece right now.
I don't know. I feel like half the time it's like running through a mess, but it's a beautiful mess. And I do. I mean, ultimately, I feel very hopeful for the future and what we're creating, but that doesn't mean it's not without stress or angst.
So, John, you talked about worth and accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
How does that align to being and doing that we teach coaches?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, the idea is to separate your worth from your doing and to lean into the beingness. I think the sphere that comes up is from uh, from an older paradigm. The fear is if I separate my worth from my doing, then there's no longer any incentive for me to do anything. So I'll just not do it. So I'll do nothing. I think the irony is that when people attend to their being and separate the being from the doing, they're really taking away the negative judgment of making mistakes or taking risks. And one of the coolest ideas I've been playing with the last 2 or 3 weeks has been this idea around flow. And to get into flow, you need to have risk of failure in order to get into flow. If you are guaranteed success, that is not necessarily flow. That's a task. You can get lost in a task, sure. But even getting lost in a task that's relatively mundane, there still is some degree of failure. Like if you're cutting wood, you might miss the axe might fall off, the side. You have to, do it again. So there has to be, a risk of failure involved if you're going to get into flow. The challenge is people, I think, avoid these because we want to avoid risk, and people are risk adverse. It's in our nature to be risk adverse. It's what's kept us safe all these millennia. So let's keep doing that. So you have to attend to the risk factors, attend to that internal landscape, and accept failure as part of the price of getting into flow.
Thank you, John. Yeah, we never plan this, do we, John? And the alignment just happens. I have so many things that are going through my mind, and even everything you're sharing right now reminds me of an affirmation I created last year with my coach. And it was a reminder to myself, I deserve to be loved for who I am, not for just what I do. Because there's
Mm-hmm.
so much wrapped up in the getting things done and the accomplishment and the goals. I know we could talk about this probably for a really long time. So I'm going to switch gear and move us to the next question, if that's good with you, John.
Yeah, this is lovely. And what I love this. I mean, I feel like Raj, we're finding our format, and I think what I love about it is it get like this Q&A session, these podcasts. It's literally an avenue to take the stuff that's I've been poking at the last week or so and be able to put it together, publicly. I feel like it's a really great structure.
Yeah, I learned so much, and I think we've got so many videos now. So go and check the videos out and get the answer, and lots of bite-sized pieces, and they're on different platforms as well. So I just want to encourage everyone to check them out. Okay, so in the last part of this question for you, John, what is compassion fatigue, and how does it affect coaches?
That's interesting. Um, yeah, this, I don't know if I've ever heard the term compassion fatigue as something that's, um, I don't know, diagnosable or, but I could see it. I could see it be something. There was an exercise that I did when I was in coach training where the trainers asked people to step into compassion and see what that feels like. Because I mean, the definition of compassion is you're feeling the same feelings that the other person is feeling, and that's a powerful place to be. And then the coach trainer asked us to step into a place of empathy, and the idea of empathy is that you are identifying accurately what the other person is feeling, but you're not necessarily feeling the same feelings they're feeling. And the point of their making this distinction is that empathy is to be, empathy is to be embraced as a coach. Whereas compassion, yeah, it's fun. It's not the best spot to be in because it limits your role as a coach as well. You're not as nimble. It tends to shut down curiosity, and it's not really your job. That's not what a coach is there for. Friend, sure. Family member, fine. But coach, not so much. It's there's something about acknowledging someone's feelings and approaching them from an empathetic standpoint. So I think the first thing is if you are a coach and you're experiencing compassion fatigue, then you you have an opportunity for growth to lean more into empathy and and to trust that your client is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. That your client has everything that they need in order to, meet this challenge, learn from this challenge. Yes, there are still structural and societal forces at play that affect some people more than others, and it's not fair. That accepted, there's still an empowering perspective that you can take that your client is brilliant, has answers, and you can lean into that brilliance and go from an empowerment standpoint. That would be the opportunity for growth if you're feeling compassion fatigue.
And it reminds me of some of the things I learned with you in the 2.0. If you're experiencing that one, you're probably working harder than you need to yourself in a coaching session. Maybe you're too attached to an outcome, or there's certain pressures that you're putting on yourself. I mean, I worked in healthcare, in leadership in healthcare, but it reminds me of healthcare where they talk about compassion fatigue and maybe, doctors and nurses becoming a little bit complacent. Oh, it's just another person that's come in with a heart condition, or, whatever that field or a niche is. Yeah, if I think about, coaches and where that could be a trigger for them, it's to think about your own compassion with self. Are you burnt out? Are you taking care of yourself? What other pressures and expectations do you put on yourself to fix it for someone? Because that's not our role, is it? And it's not our role to want success for somebody more than they want it for themselves. And I hear that from coaches sometimes as well. What do you think about that, John?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of some of the work that I've done uh, with students, and some students whose circumstances are so challenging that it's a miracle that they even get to school, let alone stay awake and do anything. And usually there's a crust, where they're asking, "Can I trust you? Are you going to judge me like everyone else? Are you just going to tell me like the usual adult things, like do your homework, get it together, you got this," those kind of things. But when they realize, no, you're just going to listen, you're going to be a place where I could say what I need to say without you reacting or overreacting, but really just being in the space with me, then it feels like the floodgates open and they just gush. And it can be one heavy thing after the next. And as coaches, I think my pre trained self would have looked at that and wanted to try to fix it immediately. Like, what can you do to fix or do different or this or that and solve it? But all that really does, and there are some circumstances where it's like, yes, this does need to be solved. Like, we need to get other resources in here and take significant action steps. And there's also parallel to that, an empowering stance where you can assume that, yeah, like, this person, when they're processing this, they're getting value. There's going to be insights. There's so much value in just sharing where you're at. And, coming, as a coach, coming back the next week, like being there again for that person, to listen again, and just showing up and being and listening provides so much value. You can trust that value. You can trust that process. And there were times when I felt like, after just heartbroken, like that this exists in the world. And that to me is also the beautiful thing about coaching, is that you get to be a human too. You get to feel all those feels. You get to be in there with them. And yet your most powerful coaching self is not necessarily compassionate, but empathetic. And that's your job. Your job is to stay curious and to replace the judgment with curiosity. It's courageous. It's courageous work. I really view it as sacred work. It's healing work. It's empowering work. And I think if enough people get trained and enough people lean into this kind of being, and it's already happening. I mean, the world is changing, and empowerment becomes the limited resource. That's the resource that you can't get from a Google search. I mean, knowledge can lead to empowerment, but these students, they are, like, some of the challenges they're facing. Just having someone to listen to and become curious about certain aspects of self. I mean, these students, the resilience and inner strength they're building is tremendous. Yeah, I forgot the original question, Raj, but hope that gets
I know we're on time, so maybe we can continue to pick up about compassion fatigue, and I think I just want to end on letting everyone know that compassion also starts with self, doesn't it? So how can you take care of yourself? You got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can show up for others. And John enjoyed the celebrations.
Thank you. It's a glorious sunny day here. I'm super thankful, and thankful for this community and being in this space. And yeah, I mean, I feel like if you are building your coaching practice, I would encourage you to take the perspective of reaching as many people as you can with coaching, for the sake of making the world a kinder, generous, more empathetic place. It's amazing when you start to step in building your career on purpose for a cause. Magic doors open. It's like, you have the opportunities to really change someone's life. You got to do it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, John. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
See you
Talk
next
soon.
week.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.